I remember the exact moment the world tilted. It wasn't loud. There wasn't a crash or a scream. It was a smell. That's how it started. It was a Sunday morning, one of those slow, golden ones where nothing's supposed to go wrong. I was still in my robe. The kitchen was warm, quiet. The sunlight poured across the marble countertop like it had no idea what was about to unfold. Greg was at the stove. My husband. He was humming something I didn't recognize. That should have been the first red flag. He doesn't hum. He doesn't cook. And he definitely doesn't make me coffee. Not unless he's feeling guilty or trying to butter me up. But that morning, he placed a mug in front of me like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Thought you could use a pick-me-up," he said. And he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It just hovered there, too perfect, too planned. I picked up the mug. The ceramic was warm against my palms. Steam curled up, soft and sweet. But then, there it was. A smell. Not the rich, bitter comfort of morning brew. No, this was syrupy. Off, like vanilla laced with something plastic. I froze. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was something deeper, that whisper you ignore in your gut. The one that says, "Look again." Before I could say anything, Melanie walked in. My sister-in-law. Greg's sister. She'd been staying with us for 2 weeks. "Just until things settle down," she said when she arrived with 2 overstuffed suitcases and a fake smile. She called it needing space. But from what, she never said. She shuffled into the kitchen, yawning dramatically, as if she owned the place. Greg had made her coffee, too. Of course he had. She reached for the other mug, and without even thinking, I swapped them. "Wait, this? One's yours, Mel," I said lightly, giving a little laugh. "I always get the ugly mug, remember?" She didn't argue. She took it, took a sip. And Greg just stood there, still smiling, still watching. But something in his face shifted. For a split second, his jaw tensed, his eyes narrowed. It was microscopic, but I saw it. Like a flicker of disappointment, like I'd just ruined something. I didn't drink mine. I pretended to, turning away just enough to pour it down the sink the moment they weren't looking. Then I sat, and I watched. Melanie kept drinking, sipping like it was nothing. She said something about the weather, laughed at her own joke. But I wasn't listening. My heartbeat was in my ears. I could feel my hands trembling under the counter, and Greg. He wasn't watching her. He was watching me. There was something sharp in his stare. Not love, not even annoyance, just calculation, as if he was taking notes on how I reacted. As if this wasn't the first time. I didn't know it yet, but that moment would be the start of everything unraveling. The mug, the smile, the smell, they were clues, tiny ones, but real. And my body knew before my mind did. Because when your world is being poisoned, literally or metaphorically, sometimes the only thing you have left is instinct, and mine had just saved me, or almost. Because as I sat there, trying to slow my breath, trying to figure out what Greg had put in that cup, I couldn't shake the look on his face. He looked like a man whose plan had just been derailed, and I wasn't supposed to notice. Not yet. But I did. And once you notice, you can't unsee it. That wasn't the first time something had felt off with Greg. I just didn't want to see it. It's easy to miss the first crack when you've painted the wall yourself. When you want it to hold. When you tell yourself the tremor was nothing, but cracks spread. Silently. And eventually. They bring the whole thing down. Looking back now, the signs were all there. There always are. A year ago, he forgot our anniversary. No card, no dinner. Not even a lazy, happy anniversary text. He said work had been busy, that he got the dates mixed up, But a week later, he sent flowers to Melanie. Not just any flowers. Her favorite, blue hydrangeas. The ones I can't stand. He said it was for her birthday. Said they were close together, easy to mix up. They're not. Not even in the same month. 6 months ago, I found Melanie crying in the guest room. I was on my way to grab laundry. I didn't mean to walk in. Greg was sitting beside her, too close, holding her hand. They both looked up like I'd caught them with a secret. He said she had a migraine. She said it was just hormones. Neither looked me in the eye, and neither stopped holding hands. I should have asked questions. I should have screamed. But we were trying for a baby at the time. I blamed it on stress, on hormones, on everything but what it really was, him and her. It's funny how betrayal doesn't announce itself. It moves through your life like smoke, changing little things. My skincare products started disappearing, replaced with brands I never used, or worse, ones that irritated my skin. Greg shrugged, said maybe I was misplacing them. Then came the nausea, random stomach aches, dizziness. Always after a smoothie Greg brought me. Always when Melanie couldn't finish hers and gave me the rest. One night, I caught her standing in the doorway of our bedroom, holding my robe. She said she thought it was hers. I knew it wasn't. It was embroidered with my initials. She laughed and tossed it on the bed like nothing. But I stood there, feeling erased, like she was trying to smear me out of my own life. And maybe she was. There was a moment, burned into my memory, when I saw her phone left open on the kitchen counter. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The message thread was short, just a few lines, between her and Greg. She suspects nothing. And then, poof. It disappeared. Auto-delete. Locked settings. Nothing recoverable. I stared at that screen like it was a confession, but I didn't say anything. Not out loud, because I wanted to believe my marriage was real. I wanted to believe. I wasn't a fool, but that morning, that coffee, it changed everything. Within the hour, Melanie was pale, sweating, clutching her stomach like something was burning its way through her. She kept saying, maybe it was the eggs, but no one else had eggs, just her, and she hadn't touched anything else. Just the coffee, the one Greg handed me. I knew. It wasn't the eggs. It wasn't the coffee. It was Greg. And the question that kept circling my mind like a storm wasn't what did he do? It was why. Why her? Why now? Why me? So I did what any woman does when she's no longer in denial. I watched, closely, quietly. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. Not yet. Instead, I played my role. The loving, confused wife. The one who needed his help finding her charger. The one who laughed when he said, "You look tired lately." The one who kissed him goodnight and locked the bathroom door to throw up the wine he gave her. I waited, and while he slept beside me, snoring softly, I started collecting. I began a folder, encrypted, hidden, labeled with a fake work project name. Inside it, I logged everything. Dates of when I felt sick, what I ate, what he brought me. I took pictures of things, the half-used bottles of sweetener, the supplements Melanie left for me beside my water glass, the receipt for antifreeze I found in the garage drawer. Why would we need antifreeze? It hadn't even snowed. One night, I waited until they were both out. Some sibling errand they invited me to join. But I had a headache. I searched their rooms. His, hers. In her bag, I found a bottle of my foundation, half used. My exact shade. In his drawer, a set of hotel receipts. One of them for a weekend I'd been visiting my sister. He said he stayed home with a migraine. The receipt said otherwise. 2 guests. 1 room and a dinner for 2. Charged to my card. I printed everything. The more I looked, the more I realized. I hadn't been living with a husband and his temporarily homeless sister. I'd been living inside a story they were writing together. And in their version, I didn't make it to the last chapter. But that's the thing about villains who write the ending too early. They forget the protagonist might be smarter than she looks, that she might be watching, recording, remembering. And now, the rules had changed. I wasn't asking questions anymore. I was preparing answers. Because the truth? It was starting to rot under my fingernails, and soon it would be in their mouths. That night, Melanie ended up in urgent care. I didn't go with them. Greg said it was probably food poisoning. He looked tired, concerned, like a man trying to comfort his sick sister. But when they left, I stayed behind and opened the fridge. I took the mug I was supposed to drink from, still half full, and poured what remained into a clear Tupperware container. Snapped the lid shut. Then I labeled it, not with a name, with a date, that morning. The moment it all truly began unraveling. The next day, while Greg was at work and Melanie was upstairs sleeping it off, I ordered a small camera, tiny enough to hide inside the porcelain bowl on the kitchen shelf, the one no one ever touched. It arrived 2 days later. I set it up facing the coffee machine, wide angle, clean audio. And then I waited. I didn't confront. I didn't accuse. I just asked, "Can you make coffee again this weekend? I've been dragging lately." He smiled. "Of course," like he was doing me a favor. Saturday came. I made sure the camera was on. Made sure Melanie was downstairs, scrolling through her phone with that glazed-over look she always had after a night of wine and secrets. Greg handed me the mug with that same syrupy smile. I lifted it, nodded, and pretended to get a call. Walked to the hallway and answered the silent phone like it was urgent. I left the mug on the counter. When I came back, it was gone. Greg barely looked up. "Melanie drank it," he said, laughing like it was no big deal. 2 hours later, she was passed out on the couch, pale and groaning. He said it was probably that new oat milk she liked, or maybe her iron levels. I said nothing. I downloaded the footage and emailed it to myself. Then I called my cousin. He's a chemist, works in a lab that tests food contamination cases. I didn't give him names, just said, "I think something's been making me sick." He didn't ask questions, just told me to bring what I had. I handed him the 2 samples, the one from the first coffee swap and the new one from this morning. He promised to run them through everything. I went home, sat on the bed beside Greg that night and listened to him snore, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel fear. I felt cold, focused. 3 days later, my cousin called. His voice was lower than usual. "Traces of ethylene glycol," he said. "Low dose, not lethal, not in one serving, but with repeated exposure. It can cause kidney damage, even failure over time." There was a pause. "This isn't accidental," he added. My hands shook a little. But my mind? It was calm, like a lock finally clicking open. That night, while Greg was in the shower, I opened the printer drawer in my home office, pulled out the folder I'd been building. I slid the lab report inside, then the hotel receipts, charged to our joint card, signed by Melanie on at least 2 nights when I was out of town. I printed the screenshots I'd quietly taken from Greg's laptop weeks ago, emails between him and Melanie about timing, about keeping her foggy, about how close we are. One line in particular stuck with me. "She suspects nothing." The irony made me smile. Then I found it. A torn piece of lined paper I'd discovered in Greg's coat pocket just days before, crumpled and shoved deep into the seam. It read, "Separate her first. Once she's out of the way, it's easier to move everything under my name. My name, my inheritance. The business my mother left me when she passed, a wellness brand built from nothing. My mother's legacy. My legacy." Greg was listed on the board. Not because I wanted him to be, but because at the time, I thought we were building a life together. I never imagined he'd try to steal it. And Melanie? She was listed as an advisor. A family insight to boost credibility. What they didn't know, what Greg hadn't figured out yet, was that 3 months earlier, I'd already started transferring every asset, every license, every password, every trademark, to me, and me alone. I'd sat with my lawyer, signed the paperwork, and sealed it in a locked vault of cloud storage and physical files, just in case. Greg thought he was playing chess. But I'd been playing memory, and I remembered everything, every shift in his voice, every misplaced bottle, every lie told with a shrug. They thought they were writing me out of my own story. What they didn't know was that I had rewritten the ending, and I wasn't done yet. I set up another hidden camera. This time in the living room, facing the couch where Melanie liked to curl up with her wine at night, texting Greg when she thought I wasn't looking. Then I made one final move. I asked Greg to make coffee one more time. This time, I didn't swap anything. I just placed the mug gently on the counter and waited for Melanie to reach for it. She hesitated, looked at me, looked at Greg. There was a moment, just a flicker, where I saw it in her eyes. Fear, not confusion, not hunger. Fear. She knew. They both did. That's when I realized they'd been watching me too. Only I'd learned how to disappear behind my own smile. Melanie didn't drink the coffee. Greg asked why. She said she wasn't feeling well. He looked at her, then at me. And for once, he didn't smile. He opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came out. Just silence. Thick. Stretching. Like something inside him had finally gone still. I stood up. Picked up the mug. Poured it out. Slowly. Right in front of both of them. "I'm not thirsty anymore," I said. Then I walked out. Into the hallway. Into the quiet. Into the part of my life that no longer had room for ghosts pretending to love me. They thought I was sleeping. I was studying. They thought I was weak. I was waiting. They thought I wouldn't find out. But now they had no idea what I'd found, and they had no idea what was coming next. Melanie was discharged from the hospital 4 days later. She came home, but she wasn't the same. Her skin was pale. Her eyes, dull. She didn't make jokes anymore. Didn't hover around the kitchen or steal my robe or accidentally pour herself a glass of my wine. She barely looked at Greg. And Greg? He noticed. You could feel the tension in the room every time he passed her. Like something unsaid was festering between them. Whatever agreement they had, whatever fantasy they were building, it had started to collapse. And I gave it one final push. I invited them both to dinner, just us, just like old times. I cooked everything myself, set the table, lit the candles, polished the silverware until they sparkled under the chandelier. It was almost romantic, if you ignored the rot. Underneath, Melanie arrived first. She barely said a word, just nodded and sat. Greg followed, flashing that tired, worn-out smile. "You didn't have to do all this," he said. I smiled back. I wanted to. I served tea. 3 cups chamomile. A touch of honey, no poison. Just silence. I let the quiet stretch long enough to wrap around their throats. And then, just as they reached for their cups, I stopped them. "I know what's in this," I said softly. "And I know what was in the coffee, too." Melanie froze. Hand midair. Greg laughed, shaky, nervous. "What are you talking about?" he asked. "You okay?" I didn't answer him. I reached down, pulled a folder from beneath the chair, and set it right between them. They both stared at it. Neither moved. "I've spent the last few weeks collecting," I said, "and I think you'll find what's inside familiar." I opened it. First page, toxicology report. 2 of them, actually. Both labeled with dates. Both confirming traces of ethylene glycol. Greg leaned forward to speak. I held up my hand. Second page, screenshot of the message Greg sent to Melanie. She suspects nothing. Third, a printed credit card statement showing the hotel booking. 2 guests. Melanie's name on the dinner charge, my account. Then came the log I'd been building. Quietly. The list of every time I'd gotten sick. The products swapped. The foods tampered with. Dates, symptoms, photos. Melanie's hand started to shake. I kept going. I pulled out the torn note I'd found in Greg's jacket. Separate her first. Once she's out of the way, it's easier to move everything under. My name. He inhaled sharply. Still, I wasn't done. I placed the final sheet on top. A certified copy of the power of attorney Greg had submitted behind my back. Unsigned, invalid, and stamped denied by my attorney. Weeks ago, and then? I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone. I want you to hear something. Tapped play. Greg's voice filled the room, recorded from our bedroom. Just keep her tired, sick, confused. It's easier that way. No one spoke. The silence was suffocating. Melanie was the first to crack. You said it was just to scare. Her? She whispered. Her voice trembled. Greg didn't respond. His jaw locked tight. I stood. I looked at them. The man I once trusted, and the woman who tried to replace me. You thought you were preparing to bury me? I said. But I was preparing the autopsy report for your soul. Neither of them moved. Greg opened his mouth, but no words came. Melanie was crying now. Quiet, shallow sobs, her hands over her face like they could erase what had just happened. I picked up my phone, scrolled to the next number, dialed, and walked out of the room. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just left them there, trapped in the wreckage they built for me. The police answered on the second ring. Greg was arrested within the hour. There was no fight. No shouting. He just stood there, hands shaking, mouth slightly open, like he still couldn't quite believe this was happening to him. The officers asked him if he understood the charges. He nodded. That was all. Melanie turned herself in 2 days later. She showed up outside the precinct in a hoodie and sunglasses, shaking as she held a manila folder filled with her own version of the story. Her confession included everything. How he convinced her it was just a psychological trick. How he said a few additives would make me more compliant. How he made her believe it was harmless, just a way to gain control of a brand, a marriage, a life. But it wasn't harmless. Not to her. Not to me. Not to what we used to be. By the end of the week, the story had leaked. The press circled in like vultures once the toxicology report was matched with batches of antifreeze found in our garage, purchased under Melanie's name, charged to our joint card, masked under a home maintenance receipt. The DA moved quickly, attempted poisoning, fraud. Conspiracy to commit identity theft. And then the big one, premeditated coercion with intent to incapacitate. That courtroom became a theater of unraveling. Greg tried to play the part of a misunderstood husband, claimed I was unstable, that the recordings were taken out of context, that the texts were fabricated. Melanie, when forced to take the stand, broke faster than anyone expected. I didn't think it would work, she whispered. He said we were just making space, creating a future, that she'd eventually just step away. They cried. They pointed fingers, blamed each other, said the other was the mastermind. That they didn't mean for it to go that far, but the judge didn't care. The evidence was too detailed. Too exact. Dates, logs, video footage, audio recordings, receipts, mug samples, the note in his handwriting, and the fact that I never once raised my voice. I just built the truth, piece by piece, until it stood on its own. When the verdict came in, guilty on all counts, I didn't smile, I didn't nod, didn't cry. I just closed my eyes and whispered. I knew. Because I had. Long before the mug swap, long before the lab reports, even before the strange smells and lingering headaches, I'd known, in my bones, in the spaces between our silences, in the way Greg looked through me more than at me, in the way Melanie tried to wear my skin and call it love. They tried to rewrite me out of my own life. They used confusion as their weapon. But clarity? Clarity is stronger. Now, I live. Alone. Not lonely. Just still. The house is quiet again. The furniture is exactly where I left it. And the mornings? They're mine. I make my own coffee. Black, no sugar, no syrupy sweet lies. It doesn't taste the same. It tastes better. I signed the final papers last month. All business holdings secured under my name, the trust fund restructured. A scholarship set up in my mother's honor, one that supports women escaping controlling households, women who need a new beginning. Just like I did, and my name, I took it back. My maiden name. Not because I needed to erase him, but because I needed to remember me. I've learned that survival isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, methodical, surgical. Sometimes it looks like smiling through a dinner where you know exactly what everyone's hiding, and calmly setting it, all on fire, without lifting a match. I don't trust easily now, but I trust myself. That is more than I ever had before. They wanted control, ownership, a future built on my erasure. But in the end, they drank from the very cup they poured. They poisoned themselves with the same sickness they tried to feed me. And now? Now I sip something stronger, self-respect, clarity, peace, the kind you earn, the kind you don't need to sweeten, the kind that burns, just a little. And this time, I know exactly what's in it.